Minecraft is full of nasty mobs, like zombies, spiders, and worst of all, creepers. But it's also full of passive mobs, like cows, sheep, and the focus of this video, villagers. Villagers can be really annoying, but they can also be really useful. In this video, I'll be telling you everything you need to know about villagers in Minecraft. To start off, let's talk about villagers as a whole. There are 15 types of villagers, 13 of which you're able to trade with. Each of these 13 types of villagers has a unique job site block, which can be used to turn a default villager into a villager of your choice. To trade with a villager, firstly approach the villager, then right-click on them. Depending on the type of villager, they will have different items that you can obtain in exchange for some of your items. Once you trade enough times with a villager, they will emit pink particles around themselves. Once they stop doing so, you can right-click on the villager again to view even more tradable items. All tradable villagers start out at a novice level, and depending on how much you trade with them, they can move up to an apprentice, journeyman, expert, and finally, master level. However, these different levels will require different amounts of experience points, with the apprentice requiring 10 XP, the journeyman requiring 60 XP, the expert requiring 100 XP, and the master requiring 150 XP. That's about all there is to villagers as a group. Now let's look at them individually. First up, we have the armorer. The armorer uses a blast furnace as their job site block and can be identified by the metal visor that he wears over his face. The armorer will trade you a wide range of armor-related items, including iron armor, shields, and even enchanted diamond armor. Here's a complete trading guide for the armorer. Next in line, we have the butcher. The butcher uses a smoker as their job site block and can be identified by the red headband and robe that he wears. The butcher will trade you mostly emeralds in exchange for various different types of food, with some exceptions at the apprentice level. Here's a complete trading guide for the butcher. Then, we have the cartographer. The cartographer uses a cartography table as their job site block, and can be identified by the monocle that he wears over his eye. The cartographer is one of the more interesting villagers, as he will trade you maps that will lead to enormous structures, like the Ocean Monument and the Woodland Mansion. Here's a complete trading guide for the cartographer. Moving on, we have the Cleric. The Cleric uses a brewing stand as their job site block and can be identified by the purple robe that he wears. The Cleric is a really great way to get emeralds from early on in the game, as he will always accept rotten flesh in exchange for emeralds. He will also trade you a range of different and interesting items in later levels. Here's a complete trading guide for the Cleric. And now, we have the farmer. The farmer uses a composter as their job site block and can be identified by the straw hat that he wears. The farmer is another great villager to get emeralds from early on in the game, as he accepts easily farmable items in exchange for emeralds. He will also trade you various different food items for emeralds in later levels. Here's a complete trading guide for the farmer. Next up, we have the Fisherman. The Fisherman uses a barrel as their job site block and can be identified by the fishing hat that he wears. The Fisherman will trade a wide range of strange food-related items, such as buckets of fish, pufferfish, and even campfires. Here's a complete trading guide for the Fisherman. Moving on, we have the Fletcher. The Fletcher uses a fletching table as their job site block and can be identified by the feather hat and the quiver that he wears. The Fletcher will trade you various different items, such as bows, arrows, and even enchanted crossbows in later levels. Here's a complete trading guide for the Fletcher. And now, we have the Leatherworker. The Leatherworker uses a cauldron as their job site block and can be identified by the brown robe and gloves that he wears. The Leatherworker will trade you mostly dyed leather armor in exchange for different amounts of emeralds. Here's a complete trading guide for the Leatherworker. Now for one of the more useful villagers, we have the Librarian. The Librarian uses a lectern as their job site block and can be identified by the reading glasses and the book has a hat that he wears. The Librarian will trade you enchanted books, which you can use to enchant your tools and armor, in exchange for emeralds and books. He will also trade you other items, but those are less useful. Here's a complete trading guide for the Librarian. Moving on, we have the Mason. The Mason uses a stone cutter as their job site block, and can be identified by the black apron and gloves that he wears. The Mason is another great villager to trade with if you want to get some emeralds early on in the game. This is because he will accept clay, an easy to find resource, in exchange for some emeralds. He will also trade you other things, such as glazed terracotta, emeralds, and even quartz. Here's a complete trading guide for the Mason. Next up, we have the Shepherd. The Shepherd uses the loom as their job site block and can be identified by the brown feather hat that he wears. The Shepherd will trade you mostly emeralds in exchange for various different dyes and coloured wool, but he will also sell you coloured beds and paintings. Here's a complete trading guide for the Shepherd. Second to last, we have the Toolsmith. The Toolsmith uses a smithing table as their job site block and can be identified by the black robe that he wears. The Toolsmith will sell you tools. Interestingly enough, he will sell you enchanted iron and diamond tools in the later levels, as well as stone tools in the earlier levels. Here's a complete trading guide for the Toolsmith. And finally, the Weaponsmith uses a grindstone as their job site block and can be identified by the black apron and eye patch that he wears. The Weaponsmith will sell you iron swords, axes, diamond swords and axes, and even bells. Here's a complete trading guide for the Weaponsmith. Now the two villagers I didn't mention were the unemployed villager and the nitwit. This is because they don't have a job site block and thus cannot be traded with. However, the unemployed villager can be identified by its respective biome clothing, and the nitwit can be identified by the green robe that he wears. So there you have it. This was everything you needed to know about villagers in Minecraft. Thank you for watching another GPORTAL video, and we hope to see you soon.